Random thoughts again. In this video, I'm going to talk about the complaints that Richard Meinertzhagen had about the intelligence of the civil service, or how educated they were, or the literacy of the civil service that the British had brought here. And he makes these complaints as he's talking about the mapping and the survey work that was going on. I've seen this a lot in this diary, and remember, I'm getting this information from the diary that was kept by Richard Meinertzhagen, who is the guy who is said to have shot Kipkoitale Arap Samoei. And this diary covers his stay in Kenya from 1902 to 1906. And in this diary, it does mention a lot of surveying that was happening. And he himself was tasked with doing survey of the land of around Mount Kenya. And much of this survey, of course, was done so that it was easy to give out land to the white settlers who were coming. And he complains about the literacy and the intelligence and the capability of the civil servants, because he says that most of them were not happy with the fact that it is the military that had been told or had been given the responsibility of surveying the land and creating maps. And these civil servants were not happy about that. And now he goes into this kind of like a rant where he says most of them can't even read and write. I'm going to read that. So this is what he says about that. He says that the administrative officers, with few exceptions, seem to dislike their country being mapped by soldiers. In fact, the soldier is not in favor in British East Africa. This is largely due to the low class of man who is appointed to administrative appointments. Few of them have had any education, and many of them do not pretend to be members of the educated class. One can neither read nor write. This is not surprising when one realizes that no examination is required to enter the local civil service. Sir Clement Hill, who recently visited the colony on behalf of the Foreign Office, remarked that so long as civil servants were enlisted from the gutter, we could not expect high standard of administration. When such men are given unlimited power over uneducated and simple-minded natives, it is not extraordinary that they should abuse their powers, suffer from megalomania, and regard themselves as little tin gods. So he says he wasn't happy with the quality of the people who were hired to be the civil servants and administrators, in particular in the early days of colonial Kenya. And he says most of them didn't have enough education, and most of them, and he says there were a few who could not even read and write. And of course he quotes Sir Clement Hill, who visited Kenya on behalf of the Foreign Office, saying that they basically describing the civil servants who are being brought to this country as from the gutter, like they were such of terrible quality. I found this entry very interesting, and I think this entry, if we can take his observation to be accurate, then it explains a lot of terrible things that went on during the colonial period in Kenya. And it makes sense that the people who were coming and taking jobs from the government to come and become colonial administrators were of such terrible quality, because this was not a very comfortable place to come and work, at least in the early days. So you would expect that the people who had options in the United Kingdom most likely were not going to take up jobs to go and be dropped in the middle of nowhere and be an administrator. So yeah, I found that entry to be very interesting. Those are my random thoughts.